A formal push now by the Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee to have a special prosecutor appointed to investigate whether a crime was committed by the administration. Congressman Joe Sestak claims that someone in the White House offered him a high-level job to stay out of the Pennsylvania Senate race. Now, it is a crime, according to the statutes, to directly or indirectly promise one a position in exchange for getting out of a primary election. So you decide, might a crime have been committed here? Listen.
I was asked a direct question yesterday, and I answered it honestly. There's nothing more to go into. I'm in this race now.
Did the White House offer you a job to not get in the primary?
And I answered that yes. And I answered it honestly. But to go beyond that doesn't serve any purpose.
Was it Navy Secretary?
As I said, there's nothing to be gained by focusing on this politics stuff.
Last Tuesday, you told us, I don't have the update with me on Sestak.
Yeah,
Things have happened since then.
I don't have any.
Send a letter to the White House counsel.
I don't have anything additional on that.
Are you ever going to have anything additional on that?
I don't have it today.
Yes or no? Straightforward question. Were you offered a job, and what was the job?
I was offered a job, and I answered that.
You said no, you wouldn't take a job. Was it the Secretary of the Navy?
Look,
was it the Secretary of the Navy job?
Anything that goes beyond that is others for others to talk about.
I'm not a lawyer, but lawyers in the White House and others have looked into conversations that were had with Congressman Sestak, and nothing inappropriate happened.
Dan Gerstein writes a column for Forbes. He was communications director for Senator Joe Lieberman, and Jonah Goldberg is editor-at-large for National Review Online and a Fox News contributor. Gentlemen, thanks so much. So that news broke at the top of the show. Orrin Hatch came on and confirmed that the Senate Judiciary Committee, Republican members of it, pushing now to have a special prosecutor appointed to investigate this. Jonah, I just want the viewers to know the language. 18 U.S.C. Section 600 says, whoever directly or indirectly promises any position or employment to anyone in exchange for any political activity or in connection with any primary election is guilty. They could go up to prison for up to a year or be fined or both. So should a special prosecutor be appointed to investigate whether that's what happened here?
It certainly sounds like it. Look, I have to admit up front, I was kind of stunned that this was against the law when I first heard about this. Because it seems to me that this is precisely the sort of thing that goes on in politics all the time. The problem is that maybe because Joe Sestak is too naive, or because he was trying to make himself into the one honest man in Rome kind of thing, he didn't realize what he was getting into when he spilled the beans about this. And that's the problem. Now that he spilled the beans, it is not about politics, as he likes to say. It is now about the law. It is about whether a crime was committed. And he can't have it both ways. He can't brag about how he honestly answered the question, but then hold back when it comes to actually revealing important facts about a possible crime.
Dan, whatever. This man wants to be a United States senator. Doesn't he have an obligation to come forward and tell the whole story? And does not the White House have an obligation to tell us what happened?
Well, I got to say, I think you know me, Megan. I wanted to reflexively defend the White House on anything, and
right.
I try to call him as I see him. But on this one, it's hard to muster any outrage. Jonah's exactly right. This is called patronage. It's the power of patronage. Politicians throughout history have used this. And the Republicans did this, Democrats did this. For the Republicans to turn around and try and manufacture a scandal out of this, I think is just silly. It's the kind of situational ethics and selective outrage that people hate about Washington. So, Dan, you sound a little like Rod Blagojevich. Yeah. I mean, the criticism he says is, okay, I did this stuff, but everybody does this stuff, and I'm being targeted unfairly. Just because everybody does it doesn't mean it's not a crime. No, but first of all, you're making a big leap to suggest in any way that there a crime was. All that Joe Sestak said was he got offered a job. We don't know the circumstances of whether there was any kind of quid in exchange. Well, let me stop you there, Dan. That's why I played the soundbite I played, in particular the Bret Baier soundbite, because Bret asked him, was it in exchange for you dropping out of the primary? And the answer was yes. Is that not quid pro quo? That's what he says. We don't know that's what happened. That's exactly my point. And again, I hate to keep agreeing with Jonah. He's exactly right. The difference here between what happened under the Bush, Clinton, Carter, any other president was Sestak was naive enough, or I would say dumb enough, to actually say this. He's created a massive distraction for his own campaign. I understand that point in the abstract, but what evidence do you have, Jonah or Dan, that this happened under the prior administrations? What specific cases? Well, look, I mean,
We know that, what was it, Judd Gregg was appointed temporarily almost, was nominated to be Commerce Secretary, because, look, politicians, the White House want to get all sorts of Republicans out of various seats so they can fill them with Democrats and whatnot. I'm just saying this sort of thing happens all the time. But I think Dan has it wrong in a very important respect. It is not Republicans trying to gin this up into or manufacture a controversy. The guy who manufactured the controversy was Congressman Joe Sestak, who's already a U.S. representative, who said pretty much flat out that the White House, the White House tried to bribe him with a federal job not to run against their guy.
No, I get
he
that,
alleged a crime.
And now Dick Durbin and others have come out, Dan, and said the White House needs to speak to
turn your
this.
back on
Jonah,
it.
that's a leap. He did not allege a crime. He said something. We don't know what actually happened.
But let's get back to the point. He won't now explain who said it to him. He won't expand on it. If you just take the plain reading of what he said, which is that he was offered a job to get out of the primary, and he said, yes, he is alleging a crime. That is a crime. You can say, well, he doesn't say a crime was committed. That's not up to him. If I say somebody without permission stopped the heartbeat of somebody else, causing them to no longer live, you may not call that a crime, but it's still murder, right? Or it's still homicide. He has said that the White House tried to bribe him. You can't then say, well, it's no big deal.
You're right that Sestak started the ball rolling, but the politicians have choices about where they show outrage and the moves they take. And the fact that Darrell Issa has made this,
not just Darrell Issa, Democrats too now, Dan, you know that.
Well, no, I know. Dick Durbin said that he'd like Sestak to tell the whole story. The reason he'd like him to tell the whole story,
Ed Rendell as well,
right? To get the story out of the way and stop the distraction. My argument just is like, look, again, this happens all the time. A and B, where were the Republicans showing this outrage when the Bush Justice Department was firing prosecutors for political disagreements? That was a serious issue, and not one Republican tried to issue a subpoena or call for an investigation.
In a lot of ways, this is the lowest form of punditry, right? Because if we want to play the imagine this was Bush game, we could do that all day long.
No, all I'm saying
liberals...
is it's hypocrisy.
But Dan, but here's my question to you. Okay, so let's assume for purposes of the conversation you're right, that George Bush did this and Republicans did this and other Democrats did this. How does that excuse it? I mean, I'm looking at the statute. Whoever directly or indirectly promises any position or employment to anyone in exchange for political activity or in connection with the primary election commits this crime. They get fined or imprisoned for a year or both, Dan. I don't understand how you look at that and you say, oh, everybody did that.
Wait a second. I'm not excusing it. I'm just acknowledging that there's different standards being used here in judging behavior. And that, to me, is what's so wrong about politics is when it's the other guy, you beat the drum and you say they're evil, they committed a crime. When your guy does it, you stay silent. Now, I think actually what's to the Democrats' credit here is that guys like Durbin and Rendell come out and sort of said, yeah, Joe Sestak should explain more. Well,
what about the White House?
Huh?
What about the White House? Should Gibbs get away with this? Well, we talked about it internally, and we don't think anything inappropriate happened.
At this point, given what's happened, they're probably going to have to answer some questions about it. It's probably not going to blow over. But again, like the difference here is people get offered ambassadorships for campaign contributions all the time. This is a standard part of politics. That doesn't make it good or justifiable. So again, it's proportionality.
Let's take. Go ahead, Jonah.
Let's take the special prosecutor. I'm sorry.
You go, Jonah, and then I got to run.
Okay, let's take the special prosecutor issue out of it. It is a perfectly legitimate political issue for Joe Sestak, who ran on honor and integrity and all of the rest, to be held accountable for what he said. This is a guy who's an admiral, for Pete's sake. He couldn't get away with this in the military. He alleged a crime occurred to bolster his own independence and integrity. And now that he's the nominee, he doesn't want to he doesn't want to be independent from the White House anymore. He wants their help, and he's not going to come clean about what he knows about a crime.
But Joe, you're putting the words in his mouth. You're saying he alleged a crime. He did not allege a crime. He said he was offered a job.
He alleged a bribe.
We covered that one. Got to cut you off now. Thank you. Very good debate, both of you. Dan Gerstein, Jonah Goldberg. Thanks so much.